All right, Louisville, let's have a talk. So, I have many a times on this show in the past few months talked about the contenders in the ACC. Florida State, obviously. Clemson, clearly. I think, maybe, possibly. The no transfers, we'll see how it goes. Miami, great transfer portal offseason. I like NC State and the offseason the Wolfpack have had. Talked about them on yesterday's show. And I got to thinking, who else could be in the mix? And I realized Louisville's just sitting there. Just sitting there. And I don't think I've mentioned them enough. I don't think I've mentioned them enough as a team that could appear in the ACC championship game. That is entirely possible. Let's start with Louisville's roster situation because Jeff Brohm and company have done a heck of a job. They're 44th in returning production, according to Bill Connolly over at ESPN, bringing back about 66% of their team that won 10 games last year. It was a pretty darn good start. It was a 10-2 regular season. Remember that? Louisville was kind of like hunting around a little bit last year for a playoff spot. Like you thought about it, you discussed it. It never got super serious, but you went on a couple dates. And Louisville is absolutely a team that could sneak their way into the playoff, whether you get the auto bid or if you go 10-2. What if they're a game better than last year? What if they're 11-1, lose the ACC title game 11-2, keeping them out of the playoff? I'd be hard pressed to see that happening. I think any 11-win team from a Power 4 conference is making the playoff. So Louisville, if you hear the metric, which of course you did, and I will repeat, that they're 44th in returning production, it's a pretty good place to be. You got 128, 38, 20, 32, something like that, FBS football teams, and they're sitting inside the top 45. That's a pretty darn solid place to be, returning about 2/3 of your roster or your production from a 10-win team a season ago. If I tell you that, how much work do you think Louisville needed to make in the transfer portal? Like, what's your thought? What you think? Well, they probably need to go out. Maybe, you lose seniors, you have kids transfer out. Maybe get like 10, 12 players, most of which are starters, a couple depth pieces in there. I think that could have been just fine. I think I'd still see Louisville. They brought in 30 transfers, guys and girls watching out there. 30. 3-0. They had 31. Penny Boone flipped his commitment. He went off to West Virginia instead of Louisville, coming over from Toledo. But 31? 31. 14 of those players are from Power 4 schools. That doesn't mean the other 16 aren't any good. I'm just saying, they're not pulling guys from the FCS ranks or giving opportunities to group of 5 kids that otherwise weren't going to reach the power ranks. No, these were players who were playing or starting caliber players or scholarship-worthy players at other power schools. Guys like Ja'Cory Brooks, for instance, who was the number 2 receiver in his class in 2021. Yeah, he's at Louisville now. He was at Alabama before. He's at Louisville now. So not every guy was that highly recruited coming out of high school. But you go through and you see a lot of blue chippers, a lot of former blue chip high school recruits that are making their way to Louisville, Kentucky to play for the Cardinals. 30 transfers. 30. I keep saying this because typically a number that large is reserved for like a Colorado that's undergoing basically its entire roster construction via the transfer portal. But Louisville, they're not reconstructing their roster. They're building their roster with that many transfers. So then you think about, okay, well, if they're going to have the roster to be good enough, which on paper they should, to contend for an ACC championship game appearance, what's the quarterback situation? I'm so glad you asked. That's a great question, random listener or viewer, whom I appreciate. Tyler Shuck is their quarterback. That is a former 4-star recruit many a moons ago over at Oregon. Got his chance to start. Didn't work out. There were some weird things over there. He goes to Texas Tech. The couple seasons that he spent with Texas Tech, unfortunately marred by injuries, so you got to keep him healthy. This is, though, an experienced veteran quarterback whose record, whilst upright, and playing the entire game as a Red Raider was rather good. If memory serves, he won about the first 7 or 8 starts in which he started and finished the game. Now that's the key. That Louisville offensive line, going to have to keep him upright. If they do that, don't tell me you can't win football games with him. And last year, Louisville was in the ACC championship game against Florida State with Jack Plummer a quarterback. This is not a hate on Jack Plummer segment. This is a recognize what Jack Plummer is at the quarterback situation. He's, he's okay. He's fine. Serviceable. Cable makes a good throw every now and then. If you gave me a choice between those two guys formerly the Pac-12 at different points in their careers, RIP, I'm going with Tyler Shough. I don't know if Shough is, a top 3 quarterback in the ACC. He's probably not. He brings more to the table from an arm talent and mobility standpoint than Jack Plummer did last year. So you keep him upright. Louisville's schedule, pretty workable, pretty doable. Let's look at it. They open with Austin Peay at home, then Jacksonville State at home. That's an FCS team and a school that was an FCS program about 2 years ago. Okay, so you got a couple of wins there. Then you on September 21st, again at home, they play Georgia Tech before they go at Notre Dame and then come back home to play SMU again. This is an upbeat Louisville segment. The devil's advocate in my ear, or the evil Dwayne Wade on my shoulder here, drop a comment if you understand that reference, is telling me that if Louisville isn't careful, they could lose 2 of these 3 games. Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, SMU. Home, road, home. At Notre Dame, that's going to be a difficult football game. That's going to be really hard to win. Going to South Bend, not an easy thing to do. You know they're going to show up. Not a whole lot going on over there. And Notre Dame football, biggest game in town, which is the way it should be in every college town. I don't care if you're in Los Angeles. College football should be the biggest game in town. So that's a challenging one. But Georgia Tech and SMU new to the ACC, of course, with Rhett Lashley and company. And Georgia Tech, I've talked about them before. Don't hate their offseason. Bringing back their coach, bringing back their quarterback. Watch out. Watch out, Louisville, I'm just saying. So then you play those games. Then you go at Virginia. Should be able to win that game. Host Miami. That is one of the most intriguing football games in the ACC. That could very well be the game that determines which of those teams, Miami and Louisville, goes over their win total. Miami's is 9.5. Louisville's is 8.5. That game's being played in Louisville, Kentucky. That's a good football game. Then they wrap up by going at Boston College. Should win that game. Should, emphasizing should. They go at Clemson. That's a tough one to win. At Stanford. Long trip. All I'm saying, long trip. Host Pittsburgh and then go at Kentucky. It's not the least. For those of you who have seen Ocean's 11, it's not the least accessible system I've seen, but it's close. If you're designing a difficult path to get to the ACC championship game that doesn't include Florida State, this is probably what it would look like. Reminder, Notre Dame is a non-conference game, but they have to play Miami at home. They've got to go all the way across the country to play Stanford, who I think are going to be improved, and they have to go at Clemson. And last week of the season, they have to go at Kentucky. There are a lot of losable games on this schedule. Now, the upside for Louisville is, let's say they were to, improve by 1 game their record from a year ago. With all the transfers and what I think is a better quarterback situation, if they go from 10-2 to 11-1, the Louisville Cardinals shall be a playoff team. That is not even a doubt in my mind. The number of quality wins you would have in there, you would have beaten 2 out of 3 of Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame. Boy, that'd be impressive. That'd be very, very impressive. This is a pretty tough schedule for Louisville, though. And I think one of the reasons that I haven't talked about them a ton, I think they've got a good coach. I like, not love, but like what they have in the quarterback situation. I like their roster. I like their roster a lot. The schedule is pretty tough. The schedule is pretty tough. The good news, they get to ease into it with Austin Peay and Jacksonville State. But Louisville, 8.5. Right now, I might lean under. I Might lean under. Record predictions are not being officially made on this show here in the month of May. That comes in August, and we will, maybe even July. We will definitely get there. But Louisville, an interesting team, cannot be overlooked in the ACC. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. It's winner take all time in the NBA and in the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. You can get your college football gambling fix as well. You can bet win totals, conference title odds, national championship odds, anything you could possibly want, even individual games, like the one I talked about on yesterday's show, Miami and Florida. That's Miami minus 3.5 in the Swamp. If you love the Canes, bet Mario Cristobal and company. If you think Billy Napier is going to get it done, you can bet the Gators. Everything you want, FanDuel's got it. Check them out. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.